Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down one of the most surprising economic transformations in recent history, a story that is, frankly, mind-boggling. It's all about Niger.
So let's just start with this one number, 14.4%. Now, according to the World Bank, that is the projected GDP growth for Niger in 2025. And to be clear, that doesn't just put them on the map. It makes them by far the fastest-growing economy in all of Africa.
Okay, so you see that number and you immediately have to ask how, right? How on earth does a nation that's under crippling international sanctions, a nation that's been basically cut off by its neighbors, pull off what looks like an economic miracle?
All right, let's get into it. And this story, according to our source, doesn't really begin with spreadsheets or in a boardroom. It starts out on the streets of the capital, Niamey, with massive, cheering crowds.
Yeah, picture this. It's November 2025. Thousands of people are out there celebrating the return of General Chiani from this huge, unprecedented nationwide tour. The source material really frames this as a victory lap, a massive celebration for a leader who had somehow managed to do what everyone said was impossible.
So how did we even get to that point? To really make sense of those celebrations, we've got to go back. Let's talk about the critical turning point, the revolution of 2023.
Okay, so here's the timeline. It all kicks off on July 26, 2023. The Presidential Guard detains the president. Just 2 days later, General Chiani is named the head of a new military government. And then, boom. In August, the regional bloc ECOWAS comes down hard with these really tough sanctions. Now, they framed this whole thing not as just a coup, but as a revolution.
So, why'd they do it? Well, the new leadership laid it out pretty bluntly. They pointed to a nation they saw as being in a deep, deep crisis. You had escalating violence from jihadist groups, you had tons of young people with absolutely no job prospects, and this really powerful, deep-seated feeling that the country's own resources were being exploited, that Niger's incredible wealth wasn't actually helping the people of Niger.
And this quote right here, wow, it just perfectly sums up the frustration. Think about that. A country powering 25% of France's nuclear needs didn't have reliable electricity in its own uranium towns. I mean, that is a gut punch, right? It's this insane paradox of being incredibly rich in resources, but poor in the basics.
So back to those sanctions. Pretty much everyone predicted they would completely crush Niger's economy. But the exact opposite happened. The economy didn't just survive, it boomed. So how? Well, the source points to three main pillars behind this unbelievable turnaround.
Okay, so let's break these down. Pillar number 1, resource nationalization. Pretty simple. They just started selling their minerals for what they were actually worth on the global market. No more special discounts. Pillar 2, a massive surge in oil production. We are talking quadrupled output in just 2 years. That is a game changer. And pillar 3, agriculture. The weather was good, productivity went up, and that whole sector just delivered. You put those three things together and you get what even the World Bank is calling an unprecedented economic surge.
And just look at this chart to really see what we're talking about. This isn't just a little bit of growth. At 14.4%, Niger is blowing past its neighbors. I mean, Senegal is at 12.1%, which is already incredible, and then you have a regional giant like Nigeria down at 3.7%. The difference is it's staggering.
And this statement really gets to the core idea they were fighting against. For years, the message was, you need us, you need France. The source says, for decades, Niger was told that sovereignty meant economic ruin, that breaking from France meant total collapse. So the new government basically said, all right, let's test that theory.
Right, so this economic boom didn't just happen on its own, not in a vacuum. It went hand in hand with a massive geopolitical reset, a complete and total overhaul of Niger's foreign policy.
And you can see that change so clearly when you look at their uranium policy. The old way, French corporate control, these old colonial-era prices, and all the profits flowing out of the country. The new way, the state takes control of the mines. They sell the uranium at real market prices, and they start looking for new partners all over the world. It is a complete 180.
And General Chiani made it crystal clear. He went right to the mining town of Arlit, the absolute heart of the industry, and he said, from now on, our uranium belongs to us. I mean, you really can't get a more powerful symbol of this new agenda than that.
And they didn't just talk the talk, they moved fast to build new alliances. Regionally, they teamed up with their neighbors, Mali and Burkina Faso, to form this new alliance of Sahel states. And on the global stage,
They started talking to Russia about uranium sales and nuclear power. They started talking to China about mining deals and loans for infrastructure. They were diversifying, and they were doing it fast. Okay, but it is so important to understand this next part. Our source is very, very clear that this whole incredible economic story is happening while a really severe and ongoing security crisis is still playing out. The money hasn't just made all the violence disappear.
Yeah, you have to remember, the new government inherited a real mess. We're talking about groups like ISIS in the Sahel, JNM, Boko Haram, all active across the country. It was a multi-front insurgency. And don't forget, tackling this security failure was one of their main justifications for taking power in the first place. So what's their new strategy? Well, it's a huge shift. They are moving away from relying on foreign troops and are focusing on what they call homegrown solutions. That means restructuring their own military, pumping way more money into defense, and, crucially, building that joint regional force with Mali and Burkina Faso. The whole idea is to solve this problem from within.
And all of that brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? Back to General Chiani's big tour across the country and that central question looming over everything. What happens next?
So what's happening in Niger, according to the source, is really the tip of the spear for this big idea called resource nationalism. And the concept is super simple, right? It's the idea that a country's own natural resources should be controlled by that country and that the wealth from those resources should benefit its own citizens first. The uranium that powers France should probably power Niger first.
And that's where we're left, with this massive, open question. The economic numbers, they're undeniable. But can this success be translated into lasting peace, into real prosperity for everyday people? And maybe, just maybe, could the model being built in Niger inspire a systemic change far beyond its borders, totally reshaping Africa's relationship with its own incredible wealth? No one knows for sure, but one thing's for certain: the whole world is watching.